Excuse me. Suddenly, the living room door swung open, and it was Mike who walked in. Following him, about 4 others entered in a line, and Bob was grinning creepily from the back. Sorry, what's going on here? We're having a barbecue with friends today. Hurry up and get some meat and beer. Bob, now utterly condescending, said that to me. Birds of a feather flocked together. I guess. Bob's friends were also smiling crudely at me. It was the last straw. I'm heading out for a trip, so I can't. What? Bob's face twisted in anger, as if I'd embarrassed him in front of his friends. Normally, upon seeing that expression, I would have panicked and done whatever Bob wanted. But now that I'm out of patience and affection for him, I couldn't care less about his mood. Just be careful with the fire, okay? Hey. I ignored all of them and left the house. But a few hours later, I got a call saying my husband had been taken to the police station while on our trip. So what on earth did he do? My name is Nancy Smith. I'm a 48-year-old government worker. My parents passed away in a car accident when I was in college. I lived in the house they left me, and I managed to graduate from college using the insurance money and scholarships. Luckily, I landed a government job. Living alone was lonely at times, but my life was stable. The office I worked at was far from the house I lived in, so I rented out my family home and moved into a small apartment near my workplace. I rented out my house as it was, and since it was in a good location, it was rented out quickly. The tenant was a very kind person, and knowing my situation, said I could visit anytime. Thanks to the rental income and my government salary, my life was more stable than most people my age. Around that time, I started enjoying visiting churches, museums, and old mansions. Time seemed to move slowly in these places, and they had a unique atmosphere that made me feel relaxed in some way, and Solemn on the other hand, which I loved. He was quiet and kind, and I was quickly drawn to him. Bob was very intuitive and took the lead, which helped because I was shy in relationships. After dating for 2 years, he proposed to me on my 29th birthday, and we got married. The next year, our daughter Emma was born, and we were incredibly happy. However, around that time, Bob's true colors started to show. I worked as well, so we had an agreement to share household duties. Bob kept his word until I was pregnant, but once I started maternity leave, he often went out for drinks. And once I was on parental leave, he stopped doing any house chores altogether. Hey, aren't you in charge of the dishes? Please. What? But you're just lounging around at home all day. Why don't you do it? Bob quickly got ready and left after saying that. Ever since Emma was born, he would go out for drinks about 4 times a week, and he never helped take care of her. Juggling housework while holding Emma, due to her night feedings, was tough and sleep-deprived. But when I voiced this out, Bob didn't understand at all. Instead, he ridiculed me, saying I was inefficient. My love for Bob decreased as the days went by, and by the time Emma turned 5, I saw him merely as a roommate. Thankfully, I didn't have to work on weekends or holidays, and I never had to do overtime. That allowed me to spend quality time with Emma. Though Emma required a lot of attention, night crying and frequent breastfeeding as a baby, as she grew older, she became very independent. She was clingy during our moments alone, but she willingly helped with house chores and always thanked me for everything. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that watching Emma grow was my only joy. Bob, on the other hand, seemed indifferent to Emma. He'd only approach her when he was in a good mood. By that time, Bob's mask had completely fallen off. Not only did he neglect house chores and parenting, but he also went out drinking almost every day and came home filling the air with women's perfume smell. But I had lost so much affection for Bob that I hardly cared anymore. Still, I didn't choose divorce to ensure Emma had a stable environment. To be honest, with the rental income from my family home and my salary, I could easily support Emma's education up to college. But I didn't want to risk Emma facing difficulties if something happened to my income. Luckily, Bob was good at his job, and even though he worked at a smaller firm, he earned more than I did. I decided to see him as someone contributing to Emma's education fund and our living expenses. However, by the time Emma entered high school, Bob's spending habits worsened. I'd let him spend freely except for Emma's tuition and living expenses. However, one day, I got a call from the school saying they hadn't received her tuition payment. Vexed and panicked, I transferred the money from my account. This incident made me realize that staying married had no benefits anymore. With that thought, I approached Bob, who was seriously looking at himself in the mirror for us going out for drinks. Hey, the school called. They said Emma's tuition hasn't been paid. So, you promised to cover there? But she's been acting so weird lately. She's always glaring at me. It through that rebellious face himself, yet he showed no interest in our daughter Emma's growth. Not paying for her tuition just because she's acting out is not only irresponsible as a father, but as a person as well. At that moment, I decided to divorce Bob once Emma would start college. And until then, I decided to play the role of a docile wife. Lost in my thoughts, I noticed Bob smirking at me. What? I barely come home, so do I even need to contribute to living expenses? Instead, I'll pay for her tuition and stop giving money for other expenses. I felt my determination waver at his words, but agreed nonetheless. It can't possibly be accepted not to contribute to living expenses from the start. But needing him to cover Emma's tuition was more important, so I begrudgingly accepted. The money Bob once provided for living expenses became his pocket money, and his lifestyle became increasingly extravagant. One day, as I was walking near the station after work, I saw Bob with a familiar-looking man, their arms around each other. Bob didn't notice me, but the man did and approached me. Hey, aren't you Bob's wife? What are you up to here? Well, I felt like I'd met him at our wedding, but I couldn't remember his name since Bob never introduced us. And even from a distance, I could smell the strong alcohol on him. How long had he been drinking? I tried to keep a smile on my face, suppressing my discomfort. Oh, I'm Mike. Bob and I were in the same club in college. By the way, you're stunning. How about a night with me? Just kidding. Hey, if you want this old lady, she's all yours. I was more shocked by Bob's words than Mike's crude remarks. No matter how drunk, no man should say that about his wife in her presence. Really? Maybe I should book a hotel room then. No, I'll pass thanks. I'm in a hurry, so chills ran down my spine, and I quickly left the scene. I could hear Mike and Bob talking behind me, but I chose to ignore them. When Bob came home late that night, by the next morning, he didn't even remember seeing me. When I asked him about Mike, Bob boasted something about him starting a lucrative business recently, and that he had gone to hear about it. Don't come asking for money when I get rich, alright? I just replied to his fluffy words. Deal. As long as he covered Emma's tuition. I had no more expectations from Bob. However, after Emma had started college, a major incident took place. It happened on the day I planned a solo trip to use up some of my accrued leave. After packing everything by the entrance, I took a little break. Bob, being chirpy, had left early in the morning, so I just left him a message. He read it, so I considered my duty done and sipped my tea. I then heard a noise from the entrance and thought Bob had unusually come back early. However, when I saw who came in through the open door, I almost spit out my tea in surprise. Hey there! Suddenly, the living room door opened, and it was Mike. 4 or so more guys followed him in. Excuse me, what's going on? We're having a barbecue with friends today. Go buy some meat and beer quickly. Both Bob with his lewd smile, and his friends were grinning at me. I felt it was the last straw that broke the camel's back. I have a trip planned right now, so I can't. What? Bob's face turned red and furious at the thought of having been embarrassed by me in front of his friends. Normally, seeing that expression would have made me panic and do as he said, but now, with my patience worn thin, I had absolutely no interest in Bob's mood. Just be careful with the fire, okay? Say, ignoring all of them, I left the house. However, a few hours later at my vacation destination, I got a call that my husband had been taken to the police station. Ching, what on earth did he do? The call from the police was to verify his identity, and they told me there was no need for me to come there immediately. Apparently, the questioning was likely to take a while. They asked if I could prepare some clothes and such for Bob to stay overnight in detention. It seems he had given them my name and contact information. We can provide some basics and bill you later if that works. Oh, that's fine. Please bill him directly. Thanks to Packers. If there's anything else, we'll contact you. Yes, thank you. It seems the reason Bob was taken to the police station was that he drunkenly tried to forcibly bring a woman walking by into his home. They caught him in the act, so there was no room for dispute. They said he'd likely be charged. On top of that, Mike is under suspicion for other matters, and there's a chance Bob might be involved as well. Hearing this, I slumped down in place, utterly drained. I was thankful to have reached my destination. Tears streamed down my face. Then, a coffee was placed on the table in front of me. Mom, are you okay? What happened? Actually, my travel destination was the area where Emma attended college, and I was planning to stay at Emma's place during the trip. But only when you're calm. Mom, maybe you should seriously consider divorcing him. You endured for my sake, right? I ranked first in my class this year. My professor told me I'd get a scholarship without any obligation to pay it back, so I'm okay. Emma, maybe you're right. Emma's words cemented my resolve. Part of me felt like a failure as a parent, letting my daughter speak this way. She panicked at the same time. I was overjoyed that Emma had grown up so wonderfully. A few days later, I received a call from the police that only Bob had been released. It seems Bob didn't know that Mike's business was involved in criminal activities, and he actually claimed to be a victim. Indeed, it was proven that Bob was innocent, and he was cleared of charges. A part of me was disappointed. The day after the call from the police, Bob called me. Honestly, I didn't want to answer the phone, but thinking about the future, I decided to pick it up. Hello. Ah, you picked up. Where are you? At Emma's place. There was a pause on Bob's end as he seemed to think, but he quickly returned to his usual demanding tone. I don't know where she lives. Just come home already. There's so much housework to do. Sorry, but I'm not coming back. By the way, Bob was taken aback by my firm rejection and seemed frozen in shock, speaking into the silent phone. I slowly repeated, I'm not coming back. I want a divorce. What the hell are you talking about? Do you even understand? Bob managed to blurt out. I didn't respond to Bob. At the same time, I heard the sound of a phone dropping on the other end. He must have been truly shocked. Taking the opportunity, I added, I'll have my lawyer contact you regarding the details. Expect a call from them soon. Hey, Nancy. Bob called my name, but I hung up without hesitation. Immediately after, I called the lawyer I had just hired the day before. The lawyer promptly reached out to Bob. Bob called me multiple times in response, but I ignored every single call. Next, I called my workplace. I'd already been considering early retirement, and now seemed like the perfect time. I decided to move closer to Emma. Fortunately, I had an inheritance from my parents and consistent income from renting out our family home. Plus, with the severance pay, I would be financially stable on my own. It took about 2 months for me to wrap things up at work, so I rented a furnished apartment nearby for the interim. I worked from there, ensuring a smooth handover of my tasks. During that period, Bob kept calling, but my lawyer handled all communications. Bob was livid about the divorce and kept claiming, I didn't do anything and you're just misunderstanding. Reluctantly, I agreed to meet up and talk things out. The situational planolis. In setting a date and time was quite a challenge, but 3 weeks after proposing a meeting, we finally settled on a date. I braced myself for what would be the most crucial confrontation. On the day of our meeting, the man who showed up looked like a disgruntled, middle-aged guy. Plus, I'm not agreeing to any divorce. I was just deceived. I didn't do anything wrong. Let's discuss this after we're seated. In response to Bob's stubborn attitude, I calmly walked into the restaurant first. It was a high-end place, with private rooms like individual cottages. This was the same establishment where Bob and I had dined to celebrate our engagement. Do you remember this place? What? Bob's lackluster response extinguished the last piece of my affection. After all, we had once promised each other a lifetime together. Hoping that recalling this place would make our discussion a bit more peaceful turned out to be wishful thinking on my part. Let's start the conversation, shall we? At my words, the lawyer seated beside me began laying out several documents. They were densely packed with records of Bob's actions, evidence of his infidelity, and details about the shady business Mike was involved in. Bob glanced at them with clear annoyance and let out a sigh. What's this? If you've got a beef with me, say it to my face. You're so passive-aggressive. This isn't about complaints. It's about laying out the facts for our upcoming discussion. Hearing this seemed to darken Bob's mood even more. Still, I had no intention of backing down. However, when another document was introduced, his face visibly changed. Hated this. So did he know? Attached to the paper was a photograph of a woman in a wedding dress, smiling beside a man who was presumably her husband. Seeing the two of them, Bob's face turned pale. That's the woman you've been seeing, right? Your boss's wife. I'd spirit. It seemed like Bob genuinely didn't know. He looked flustered, a far cry from his previous arrogance. According to my investigations, Bob and this woman had been involved for around 3 years. Bob had considered divorcing me to marry her, but lately she had been distant. Turns out, she had married Bob's boss even before meeting Bob. Apparently, it was a shotgun wedding, and just recently, they celebrated their 10th anniversary by taking wedding photos. And of course, evidence was mailed to Bob's workplace, and scheduled it handed to his boss today. She probably has received the notice by now. Except the devil, away. Just at the right moment, Bob's phone on the table rang, displaying his boss's name on the screen. Bob didn't answer, so I took the liberty to tap on answer. Switching it to speaker mode, a deafening yell blared from the phone, so loud you'd think the windows would break. You've been deceiving me. Cheating on my wife even during work hours. That's a betrayal to the company too. Don't think you'll be safe at work starting tomorrow. I'm so sorry. Bob, in a tizzy, looked absolutely pitiful. There was no trace of the charm he once had when I left him. I shook my head and tapped on the documents. So, can I submit the divorce papers for now? No, I won't. Perhaps because his plans to remarry his affair partner were now ruined. Bob became even more stubborn about wanting a divorce. Feeling cornered, I called out to someone beyond the door. It seems so. This is troublesome. What should we do? Who's there? Humbling with fear. Bob looked over to me for answers. I simply directed him to the door with my gaze. Hesitant at first, Bob's face turned an even paler shade when he saw the person who walked in. Vlad. Nan! Why are you here? It was my parents-in-law. Bob didn't get along too well with my in-laws, and after our marriage, he forbade me from interacting with them. For him, they were the last people he expected to see. My mother-in-law gave me a slight nod before storming up to Bob and raising her hand. But with a loud slap, Bob's face turned red. My mother-in-law, even more flushed than him, began shouting. How could you? Cheating on Nancy, a wonderful wife. What have you done, Ho? Nancy and you haven't met since we got married. How do you know she's wonderful? Before I could respond, my father-in-law intervened. Nancy has been sending us letters once a month, updating us on Emma's growth. Recently, she and Emma have even come to visit. She's too good for a son, who hasn't even reached out once since getting married. What the heck? Hey, didn't I tell you not to contact my family? What gives you the right to reach out without my permission? Bob shouted, diverting his gaze from my father-in-law to glare at me. Actually, my in-laws own a farm and live together with my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. For some reason, Bob, who never got along with my brother-in-law's wife and always criticized her, was kicked out of the family home right after graduating from college. Bob probably kept me away from my in-laws because he was worried his bad behavior would come to light. When I found out from my in-laws, brother-in-law, and his wife that this was the case, I was stunned by my poor judgment in choosing a husband. When I sent a greeting card, they were kind enough to call me. That's how we secretly kept in touch. You deceived me? Who I associate with is none of your business. I don't want to hear it from a man who cheated repeatedly and got involved in shady business dealings. I retorted, and Bob froze, looking frustrated. However, he suddenly changed his mind. Seven! You seem to have thought this all through, but I'm divorcing you. I will be giving you a dime or a house. Why even bother saying that? Everything's going to Nancy. My mother-in-law said, pushing him slightly. He was taken aback. I coldly watched Bob for a moment, put the documents in my bag, and left the restaurant with my lawyer. Later, I went to the city court to submit the divorce papers. Although it was a swift process, I felt extremely relieved. Bob was exposed for having an affair with his boss's wife and engaging in it even during working hours. He got fired from his small company. Since he gave me all the money, he was left penniless. In the end, my in-laws temporarily took him back to their family home and later sent him off to live with distant relatives. Turns out, my brother-in-law's daughter got married last year, and she's about to return to her hometown for a baby shower. Because of past grievances, my sister-in-law hadn't forgiven him, and she even refused to let him into the house. During the summer, Bob spent one night in a small hut on their property. The next morning, a relative came and took him away. Although Bob's lover and her husband, who's also Bob's boss, didn't end up divorcing, she was forced to live with the boss's parents. It's said that she's constantly under the watchful eye of the mother-in-law, enduring her constant snide remarks and nagging. Obsessed, Bob apparently sneaked out of his relative's house to see his lover. However, it seems she was just using him for fun, because as soon as she saw him, she said, "Give me some money so I can get away." This is what the mother-in-law had heard through the grapevine from the relatives. He was devastated and returned to his relative's house. Now he works nonstop, and when he does get a day off, he's under the watchful eye of his relatives and can't go out freely, even after the divorce. I've maintained a relationship with my in-laws, as they are Emma's grandparents. My brother-in-law and his wife are wonderful, and we often get together for meals, making me feel like I have a new family. Emma was initially upset a bit about being left out of the divorce proceedings, but she was actually thrilled with the outcome. Since she lives nearby, we hang out together twice a week. As for me, I've moved to an area with a lot of churches and cathedrals and have been immersing myself in my hobbies. I own 2 homes, one in my hometown and the other in the city center, which I rent out to others. The rental income alone covers my living expenses. So, I've been able to freely use my retirement funds and insurance payouts for Emma's college fees, my hobbies, and travel. Basically, I've been thinking that with such a relaxed lifestyle, I should have gotten divorced much earlier. I picked up the special notebook Emma gave me for my birthday and set out on my church visiting trip, acting all high and mighty over just $300. I don't need that chump change. Chuckling, my son and his wife looked down on me, hurling harsh words. I've been supporting them for a decade since they said they were struggling financially, despite seeing the 2 of them never settling into steady jobs. I bit my tongue and tried to find a way to help. Look at the thanks I got. Why did I even think of helping these people? I believed that someday they'd appreciate my feelings and soften their attitude. But that day never came. Isn't that a clear answer? I can't help but be angry at them, who laugh and are like, "It's not enough. It's just pennies." After taking away 10 years of my time and the money I saved up for 10 years, I dedicated myself to my son and his wife without saying a word. But that ends today. My name is Mary, a homemaker in my 50s. After my husband passed away, I've been living alone. We have a son. After graduating from college, he moved out and now has a family with his wife. They live nearby, but honestly, we aren't on good terms. They're, let's say, a bit problematic. After college, my son started working at a company where he met his wife. She quit her job upon marrying, becoming a full-time homemaker. But less than a year later, my son quit his job. Apparently, he had trouble with his boss. Thinking he'd easily find a new job, he threw everything away over one dispute. But life didn't go the way he thought. Despite searching, he couldn't find a suitable job, and he eventually gave up on working altogether. His wife didn't seem interested in working either, and in a few months, they fell into financial hardship. To support them, I decided to send them a modest $300 a month. They cried and thanked me for the financial aid. Every day, I hoped they'd get out of their hardship and be able to support themselves. But now, 10 years later, my monthly $300 isn't something they're grateful to receive. It's become something they think they're entitled to. For instance, one month was hectic with family events, and I couldn't find time to meet my son and his wife on the day I usually give them their monthly allowance. It's still late that night. I heard someone knocking loudly at the door, and it was my son and his wife visiting. "Mom, we need the allowance on time. Are you starting to forget things because you're getting older?" My son teased, but exhausted and sleepy from several busy days. I was like, "I'll give it to you another time. Please go home for now." Then his wife, her face flushed with anger, was like, "This is a monthly thing. You need to give it on time. Just because you're my husband's mother doesn't mean you can act this way." And she grabbed me by the collar, shocked by the sudden confrontation. I ended up handing over the already prepared $300 to my son and his wife. If you just handed it over honestly from the start, this wouldn't have happened. I don't want to use physical force with you either. Yeah, listen to us and behave. If you ever lose your mind, we're the ones who'll be looking after you. It wouldn't hurt to get in our good books now, right? I was infuriated by their audacity, but if I retaliated now and upset their pride, they might never be able to stand on their own 2 feet again. Just like when my son had to quit his job. Still swallowing my feelings, I just smiled, apologized, and did as they asked. Looking back, I believe I should have stood my ground then, but I had an overwhelming desire for them to somehow get back on track. And that's why I felt so powerless. But the unpleasant memories with them weren't just that. One day at work, I got a call from a good neighbor. "Mary, can you talk? It's about your son and his wife." "Oh my, I'm sorry. I'll be right there." Apparently, when the neighbor returned from shopping, she noticed signs of a break-in. Checking the security footage, she was shocked to see the culprits were none other than my son and his wife. Though her place was a mess, nothing was stolen. Stayed aware of my situation with them, she chose to contact me first. I left work early, got in touch with my son and his wife, and the three of us went to apologize. I'm truly sorry. I kept apologizing, but my son and his wife showed no remorse. The neighbor looked displeased, but the matter was settled when I agreed to compensate for the broken window. But on the way back, they said something unbelievable. Why are old folks so petty? We just wanted to borrow some stuff. I was so stunned that I could only utter but they went on, not even looking at me. Yeah, we broke a window and made a mess, but we didn't steal anything. Isn't she overreacting? I couldn't believe my ears. My son just nodded along. I just couldn't grasp what on earth they were talking about, and was silent the whole time, seeing the scene unfold before my eyes. I should have definitely spoken my mind to them without getting scared. But doing so showed my weakness. Still, from then on, I noticed their increasingly aggressive behavior, but fortunately, they didn't cause any major issues except for that incident with the neighbor. So, I continued to provide for them, hoping they'd one day be independent. When they asked for something, I'd buy it if I could afford it. My son wanted gadgets to socialize with his friends. His wife wanted luxury brand items so she wouldn't feel inferior to others. Their demands escalated, and they began to rely on me for everything. Even on my days off, they'd call me over to do household chores. I started working tirelessly. They started asking me more than just money. Living requires money. They had neither the means nor the will to earn their own, so I had no choice but to support them. No matter how tired I was, I committed to my job and did any chores they asked, even if I was exhausted. As a result, I was worn out. Thick circles formed under my eyes, my skin got rough, and dizziness became a regular companion. My son and his wife laughed at me and were like, "Bachelor look like a monster." Moreover, his wife pointed a finger at me and was like, "She's given up on being a woman." I didn't even have the energy to fight back against such harsh words. I had a gut feeling that I was reaching my breaking point, but I believed that if I didn't keep going and working, both their lives and mine would fall apart. So I did my best to push through and somehow managed to keep going. Truth be told, I wanted to lean on someone, cling to them, and just give up a long time ago. One day, as I was doing chores at my son's house, a minor incident triggered a fight. Because I was exhausted and on edge from many days of strain, every little action of theirs irked me. "Come on, that's actually Merle. Stop joking. If we left you, you'd be all alone. You wouldn't have the guts to live on your own without your precious son and his wife." "Mary, when did you become such a joker?" "That joke wasn't funny at all. You had me worried for a second there. They thought I was just speaking out of frustration and wasn't serious about stopping the financial support. They continued to taunt me. If you've got the guts, go ahead. But if you do, we'll cut ties with you. Think you can handle being all on your own? Come on, you'd want to take back those words in no time. There's no way your stubborn mom could do something like that, right?" They had no idea how backed into a corner I felt, yet they continued to treat me poorly. I wondered what was in it for me to keep supporting them, buying them what they wanted, and doing their housework. Wasn't I just being used and taken advantage of? Feels like I'm just getting the short end of the stick. Taking advantage of my feelings, treating me like a lackey, and this attitude even when I'm at my wit's end. They might be family in name, but with the way they were acting, I couldn't see them as such. I'm serious. Remember you asked for this? I said, yet they just chuckled, taking it as a joke. Go ahead and try. But you'll regret it soon. I can already see it. Those words of my son lit a fire in my fighting spirit. I'm gonna send them straight to hell. As I packed up to head home, all I could think about was how I was gonna drag them down. For starters, I cut off all the support I had been giving to my son and his wife, just as I had promised. No more money transfers, no financial aid, and no more helping around the house. From my perspective, after having lived for the sake of my son and his wife, taking this action without considering their needs was something I had never done before. Now I could take a break without worrying about them. I could spend my money for myself and do the chores just to my satisfaction. I realized firsthand how wonderful it feels to live this way. My son and his wife thought I'd never be able to sever ties with them and live on my own, but in reality, this life of independence that I had been yearning for over a decade was exactly what I got. Furthermore, I decided to put more pressure on them. In fact, the apartment my son and his wife live in, I had taken on the lease for them after they got evicted from their original place because they fell on hard times. Of course, I was also the one paying the rent. having decided to cut off all support for them. It didn't make sense to continue helping with the rent. I contacted the real estate and decided to cancel the lease. The person who managed the apartment, well aware of our situation, was accommodating. They were given a month's notice to leave, or else they would be reported. That night, I texted my son and his wife to tell them that if they don't move out of the apartment within a month, it'd be a matter. They read the message immediately, and not even 5 minutes later, my phone was ringing. "Mom, what the hell is this? Where are we supposed to live?" My son shouted as soon as I answered. I could hear his wife freaking out in the background. "You might have forgotten, but I was the one paying for that apartment. I told you I was cutting off all help, didn't I? So of course, I'd cancel the lease too, right? We never agreed to that. You said you'd stop sending money, but we thought you'd continue with everything else." I chuckled at his naive expectation, thinking and was like, "Really? Well, they say such hurtful words to me. They intended to keep accepting my support, except for the allowance." It made my head spin to think of the ridiculously naive mindset of my son and his wife. I've been treated however they pleased all this time. Even when I said I didn't like it, I always complied with their demands, giving them both money and time. All of it, was out of a somewhat selfish wish of mine, hoping they'll eventually stand on their own 2 feet. But I was wrong, because they're the type to take advantage as much as they're pampered. In that case, it would have been much better to make my position clear and make them listen. I was the one who gave them allowance, provided financial support beyond that, and did the housework for them. Any way they look at it, I held the upper hand, and they should have been grateful, and yet they treated me with complete disrespect, like I was some kind of servant, a mere tool, an ATM, using me however they liked, and then, to add insult to injury, they even laughed at me when I was at my wit's end. Why did I try so hard for such an insane couple? Even when they treated me unfairly, I kept my mouth shut and let them have their way. Doing all that, they never reciprocated my feelings. Instead, they just kept taking advantage of me. Only when I reached my breaking point did I realize how lowly and selfish they truly are, and how they never really saw me as family. They might have seen me as a tool, but never as family, not even a bit. Why didn't I realize this sooner? Why did I continue to give my all until I felt so overwhelmed? Why did I keep believing them? Looking back, my past actions seem pitiful, believing that one day they'd stand on their own. Tirelessly supported them. But all that meant nothing. As I regret the past, my anger towards them wells up. I need to give them a piece of my mind. I would be satisfied until they admit their wrongs and apologize. If feeling this way, I spoke up again. I'm willing to stop the allowance but continue with the other support. What are you thinking? At my words, my son tried to interject, but I cut him off. No bets. Look at me. Your lives have always depended on me. If you upset me just once, if I ever felt like not helping you, you'd be done for. Like he's tenkapayamaki for you. I'm naive enough to keep hoping that maybe one day you'll be independent, that perhaps one day you won't need me to get by. That's right, Mom is kind. That's why you're not really going to abandon us, right? You just said those things in the heat of the moment, and now you can't take them back, so you're doing this, right? It's okay, we forgive you. Let's try to be a family again, okay? Don't be stupid. I come to my senses. Despite all the support, you guys don't even want to be independent, do you? You just want to keep living comfortably on my dime, don't you? Aimed to backpedal, my son responded, "That's not it. We did want to be independent, but we can't. We don't even feel like looking for jobs." My wife feels the same. We did our best in our own way, but it was just impossible. Almost laughing at his response. How dare they say they did their best in their own way? I've been keeping an eye on my son and his wife for several years. Neither of them seemed to be making any effort to find jobs or live frugally. They were just living comfortably off me every single day. How does that translate to they tried their best in their own way? Listen, Aizoran, we're really grateful for everything you've done. I mean, we couldn't put it into words, but you've always gone above and beyond for us. We always knew that we're able to live because of you, and that we'd be lost without you. So why don't we try again? You need us too, right? Are you kidding me? I don't need you. On one hand, there's a guy who's still stuck on some trouble he caused 10 years ago, never settling into a steady job and just being a layabout. And on the other hand, there's a woman acting like a stay-at-home wife, never admonishing or supporting her husband, just doing whatever she pleases. You think I need folks like you too? You couldn't be more wrong. Do you have any idea how much I've had to endure because of you two? Day in, day out, working to make money for you. And even when I'm not working, I'm doing chores for you. There's no way that isn't tough. I've come to realize that I'm not naive enough to want to be family with you two after all. All that. Don't say such harsh things. I mean, we need you. Without someone like you supporting us all the time, Despite my words, my son kept insisting on his perspective without paying any heed to mine. As I was wondering what to do next, I suddenly heard a shout like, "Give me that." And then his wife came on the line. Mr. Carey, to be honest, I've been frustrated with my husband's selfish behavior too. Most men go out, work and support their family, but he just wanders around, not working for my sake. Every day I regret marrying him. I feel just as wronged as you do. I'm a victim too. Please, help me even if it's just me. I can't do this without you. Then, out of nowhere, his wife tried to abandon him to save herself. Stunned by her audacity, she continued, "I'll do anything you need me to, whether it's housekeeping or anything else. Use me however you want. Please, 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 please. Mary, don't abandon me." After those words, I could hear the couple arguing again, over the phone and struggling to take control of the call. Just annoyed by the noise. I frowned, and then it seemed like the phone got knocked out of hand, and got disconnected. This passed without a call back from them. Apparently, their relationship deteriorated significantly after that incident, and they decided to divorce and go their separate ways. They blamed each other, and even started fighting over money. The dispute went on until they finally got divorced. After the divorce, both tried to contact me, but by that time, I'd already blocked both of their numbers, so I never heard from them. My son started working day and night at a factory job, barely making ends meet. Just on the other hand, his ex-wife tearfully ran back to her parents' house and confessed everything. They reprimanded her severely. She came to apologize, escorted by her parents, but she cried so much that I couldn't understand what she was saying. Since then, I'd been living for myself. After 10 long years, I had been bound by their presence and never had a moment to cherish my own time. Living a life centered around myself felt incredibly refreshing and irresistible. Although I ended up alone without them, I found comfort in that. I've no idea what the future holds. There might be a time when I won't be able to live just for myself. But for now, I think I'm just gonna live for me. David and Samantha are coming home to give birth, so you need to leave. My mother-in-law coldly declared, "My oldest son and his wife are scheduled to return in 3 days. And me?" When she continued, "Yes, we don't need you to play the role of a mother anymore. You've served your purpose a long time ago. Now, David and others will live here, so please leave by tomorrow." I had known I was not accepted as family since the day I got married. I have been treated as my husband's wife until now, but I never thought I'd be told to leave after so many years. "You are a failure who can't bear children. We allowed you to experience child rearing. You should be grateful. We have no obligation to support you anymore. Even Michael is tired of you." "Hey, and that's for you? Michael too?" I swallowed hard. If this is not just a conspiracy between my mother-in-law and David, then I don't need to be considerate to my husband anymore. They're foolish to drive me out, but it's my mother-in-law who lights the fuse. What happens to this house from now on is not my concern. They should face the reality that they could have ignored. I am Chloe Robinson, 45 years old. I live with my husband and mother-in-law near a popular area close to the station in New York. The accessibility to the central part is outstanding. At the time of house hunting, my husband, who had just been promoted to section chief, was particularly concerned about this. The rent is high, but there are many rooms, and it was worth the slight stretch. My husband Michael is 8 years older, divorced, and we met through a friend's introduction. His kindness and tolerance, unique to older men, gave me a sense of security, and we decided to get married after 2 years of dating. Even after I told him that I can't have children because of a past illness, his attitude remained kind. Conversely, even after hearing about his circumstances, my feelings did not change. My husband had a son, David, from his previous marriage. I'm truly sorry to ask you, a first-time bride, to live with a parent and son. I will not cause you any other trouble. I will definitely make you happy." My husband promised. He even suggested moving to a spacious apartment to prepare a room for me, so I wouldn't sit feebled in the new home. David will be turning 10 this year, and with his grandma around, I think hardly any hands are needed. So there's no need for you to forcibly become a mother. After divorcing his previous wife, my husband had been living at his parental home, receiving childcare help from his in-laws. Years later, my father-in-law passed away in an accident, and my mother-in-law seemed to have been taking care of David as a mother. David wouldn't meet my eyes from the first time we met. I figured it was just shyness, or maybe it was the difficult age, so I didn't mind it, as long as he accepted me as a housemate. I was fine with that. My mother-in-law was a quiet and elegant person. Even when I visited for a marriage greeting, she was polite and I thought we could get along living together. I'll prepare the meals, as usual. Michael often comes home late, so it's fine if meal times are different. Chloe, I'll ask you to take care of cleaning and laundry. Was understood. Thank you very much. After getting married, I changed from being a full-time employee at the pharmacy to a part-time one. I started to work slower in the morning to share household chores, and I usually got home around 8 p.m., but the meal was always prepared when I arrived. I was thankful for this living arrangement. My mother-in-law and David would have their meal before, and I was always alone, though I felt somewhat sad about being married and eating alone. I accepted it as our style. However, it turned out that my mother-in-law never thought well of me and had no intention of accepting me as a family. David, you have a sports day coming up before summer, right? When is it? We'll all go to cheer for you. Oh, well, after our marriage, I spoke to David, who I still couldn't get close to. Yeah. No, interrupting David's hesitation, my mother-in-law cut in. We'll go to the sports day, just Michael and me. Chloe, you don't have to worry about it. Misinterpreting my mother-in-law's words. I thought she was being considerate. I can take a day off work. Let's all go together. It's fine. You are Michael's wife. The family for David is still just me and Michael. I was considerably shocked. When I spoke to my husband about it that night, Mom was always clinging to David. She probably thinks you're going to take David from her. I'll talk to her. That's eventually. I also started participating as a mother from that year's sports day, but aside from school events, there were almost no opportunities for David and me to be alone together. Sometimes David seemed like he wanted to say something, but my mother-in-law always intervened. I learned it later on, but it seemed that my mother-in-law had been bad-mouthing me to David. Chloe was saying she could be happy alone with Daddy if you were gone. She's a terrible person, right? Daddy is surely being deceived by her. It wouldn't be strange if a boy in his sensitive years developed distrust towards me after hearing such things. It's a sickening story, but back then, I never thought that my mother-in-law could do such a thing. After graduating from high school, David immediately moved in with his girlfriend who he had been dating and left home. After getting a job a year later, David registered his marriage with his girlfriend without having a ceremony. When David left home, it was surprising how my mother-in-law stopped doing household chores. Instead, it seemed that bullying me became her only pleasure. She didn't cook anymore, just sat at the dining table waiting for me to come home. I went straight to the kitchen to make dinner without even sitting down. You really are inefficient. It's gonna take you till midnight at this rate. I had always relied on my mother-in-law for meal preparation, and I was not good at cooking. As soon as the food was ready, my mother-in-law tasted each dish and complained about how bad it was every time. I'm sorry. I'm trying my best. Oh, Chloe, you are surprisingly tasteless. Good thing David never had to eat such things. If it's bad, she should just make it herself. She just wants to complain to me. Not only the meals, she also started to criticize the cleaning and laundry, which she had never mentioned before. Why are these laundries so wrinkled? You have to vacuum every corner. You really can't do anything right. Didn't your parents teach you anything? Saying that, my mother-in-law sighed while looking at me, being demeaned about my family. I clenched my fists in frustration. I don't know how you got Michael, but I can't see you having that much charm as a woman. And at the end of every sarcastic comment, she always said the same thing. If it weren't for you, David wouldn't have left. I knew that David leaving left a big hole in my mother-in-law's heart. It might be what they call empty nest syndrome. If taking it out on me made her feel better. I thought I would endure it with that mindset. But with a certain incident as the trigger, my mother-in-law's harassment stepped up a notch. That event was the pregnancy announcement from Samantha, David's wife, our first daughter-in-law. My mother-in-law was elated like never before. A baby from David. It's definitely gonna be cute. Oh, it's my first grandchild. Seeing the two so happy made me happy as well, but my mother-in-law's joy was extraordinary. The main reason my mother-in-law was so thrilled was probably because David asked her, "Grandma, can Samantha give birth in the hospital near you and stay at your place after the birth?" Samantha's parents live an hour away by plane, and there's no one here she can rely on, so they asked to rely on our home. Of course, my mother-in-law couldn't refuse David's request. Phone calls from David became frequent, and my mother-in-law's tension skyrocketed. The day after a call, my mother-in-law energetically began preparations. From cleaning David's room, preparing futons, to creating a list of baby items, it seemed she had grandchild fever. Naturally, when I returned from work, Chloe, I've swept David's room, so please wipe the floor and windows. Also, please wax them. We're going to the department store to look at baby beds on the next holiday. Cleaning and waxing at night was tough after getting tired from work. If I skimped, I was ordered to do it over again. Furthermore, my mother-in-law demanded money, and before I knew it, the house was overflowing with baby goods. Chloe, please withdraw some money tomorrow. I found something I want to prepare for the baby. Again, don't preparing so much be a waste? Let's choose together after Samantha and David come. I had wanted to respond to my mother-in-law's requests, but I was troubled being made to spend money like water. How can you say such a cold thing? It's Michael's grandchild, right? Oh, that's right. Chloe, you're not connected by blood to David, are you? It doesn't matter to you, right? That's not true. Please don't say such things. I just thought Samantha would want to choose for herself. Don't you want to use things you've chosen for your own child? Perhaps because it was a sound argument. My mother-in-law glared at me sharply. I thought I had said too much, but it was too late. My mother-in-law, without saying anything, and with a frustrated look, returned to her own room. I did reflect, but I was also shocked to have been talked about like that regarding David. The next morning, my mother-in-law still hadn't gotten up, seemingly still angry. My husband was leaving for a 3-day business trip that day, so he said through my mother-in-law's door, "I'm leaving. Please don't dampen Mom's excitement about her great-grandchild. She hasn't been herself since David moved out. You were worried too, weren't you? Yes, but if she spends so much money, we'll be broke by the time David and the others come." My husband immediately scowled. "Are you saying it's because my earnings are bad?" "I'm not saying that." My husband, saying it was fine, left with an unsatisfied expression. It's always like this when it comes to money matters. Since I'm the one managing the money, I can't help but think about the future. Of course there was a reason for worrying. We've been married for 13 years. I've really had a comfortable life with my husband. Michael, you can use your part-time job money. Chloe, just for yourself. Since Michael said so, I've been saving all the money except for my allowance. Even though it's in my name in the bank book, I consider it our shared property. But the performance of Michael's company has worsened, and his salary has dropped to 2/3 of what it was when we got married over these 5 years. There's a fear whether the company will last until his retirement, but it didn't seem like he was considering changing jobs. Maybe he can't let go of his manager title in front of my mother-in-law. No, I'm paying the rent and Michael is paying for living expenses. Living expenses. I kept it a secret from my mother-in-law to save my husband's pride. I took off work a bit early that day to apologize to my mother-in-law. When I got home, my mother-in-law was already sitting at the dining table waiting for me. "I'm sorry about yesterday. I said too much." My mother-in-law didn't respond. Instead, she hit me with something out of the blue. "David and Samantha are coming back home to give birth, so you should leave." My mother-in-law said it with a cold voice. "David and his wife are scheduled to return in 3 days. Huh? Mil, not understanding. I was dumbfounded. Yes, we don't need a mother role anymore. You've outlived your use a long time ago. From now on, David and the others will live here, so please leave by tomorrow. I knew I had not been accepted as a family member since we got married. I had been treated as my husband's wife until now, but I should have doubted it when David came home with us for the birth. We even let an incompetent, childless person like you have child-rearing experience. You should be thankful. We don't have an obligation to support you anymore. It seems like Michael is tired of you too." "Hey! Michael too?" "Yes, isn't he probably getting along well with his new girlfriend by now?" I swallowed hard. "There's no way. Certainly, my relationship with my husband has been thinning lately. Was it a pitfall to think that it was limited to my husband? If you think about it, there was no business trip until a year ago. Pretty people are mustard. I will dine out today." I grabbed my bag and staggeringly left the house, walking earnestly. I wanted to calm my heart that was greatly upset about my husband. While walking, I tried calling my husband's cell. Even being told that by my mother-in-law, I still wanted to console my husband. After calling multiple times without an answer, I called his company and was told he's on a break until the day after tomorrow. The credibility of what my mother-in-law said is increasing. Is he really traveling with a woman? Bad imagination surged one after another, beating down my heart, and tears came out. While walking staggeringly, a bar behind the station caught my eye. It was a shop that we often went to when we moved. I thought it still existed while I went through the curtain. "Welcome." The master's expression clouded for a moment as our eyes met, and then he gave a slight nod. "Does he remember me?" Asked her, long time no see. "It's been about 8 years. I used to come here often with my husband. This long time no see." "I remember." Sure enough. I inadvertently smiled. At the same time, I felt my heart loosen. "May I have a beer and a combination of grilled chicken?" "Yes." The master has always been a man of few words, and that hasn't changed. I put my cell phone on the table, and the Stanley picture shined. It was one taken with David when he turned adult. He looks good in the swimsuit we chose together. I really wanted to get along more as a family. As I was gazing, a part-time girl brought beer and grilled chicken. As I gulped down the chilled beer, I felt as if the fatigue of my heart was also washed away. I wonder if it's possible to move tomorrow. When I searched, I found a moving company that can do it the next day. I also checked for junk buyers and saved 2 in my favorites. Since, on a whim, I changed my phone's wallpaper. It feels like my head is completely clear. Both the beer and grilled chicken taste exceptionally good. Now, I'll go home and think it through carefully. When I started walking out of the restaurant, I was stopped with an "excuse me" from behind. Turning around, a girl, an employee from the restaurant, was running towards me. "Are you Mrs. Robinson by any chance? I happened to see your screen wallpaper just now." "Yes, I am." It felt like an act of God. "Your husband, he's having an affair with one of our employees." Maybe her youth made her sense of justice strong. That must be why the restaurant owner had that expression. She said my husband still frequents the restaurant, deeply involved with a long-standing part-time female employee. Just even during work, when customers are few, they are always talking. After the bar closes, they leave together. They're always so clingy, it's really disgusting. Sure, candid thoughts. I can't help but give a bitter smile. We exchanged contact details. "If something happens, I'll contact you," she said. Those words felt supportive in my lonely battle. What my mother-in-law had said was true. Once my mind was clear, rather than sadness, a bubbling anger was rising within me. I'd as well go all out and end it. I made a reservation with the moving company I had saved in my favorites. If it's not just a conspiracy between my mother-in-law and David, there's no need for me to be considerate to my husband anymore. They're foolish to drive me out, but the one who lit the fuse was my mother-in-law. What becomes of this house from now on is not my concern. When I got home, I spent until midnight packing my belongings. There's no more hesitation. At exactly 2 p.m., the scheduled moving company arrived. Or as you told me, I'm leaving today. The moving company is coming, so I'm taking everything I bought. Yes, it would be nice if you could erase even the traces of you being here. As she wished, I removed all the furniture and appliances from the house. I've been covering all expenses other than rent and living costs with my part-time job earnings. As I watched the belongings being carried out one by one, my mother-in-law started to panic. "Wait a minute. Chloe, what's this? We can't live like this. Let's to leave no trace. I'm taking out everything I bought. You can start a completely new life from tomorrow." While holding back my laughter, I ignored my resisting mother-in-law and carried out everything. She was also complaining to the moving staff, but that wouldn't change anything. The only things left in the house were a ton of baby goods and a chest of drawers from before my marriage. Expectations? Well then, goodbye. I believe I've left no traces behind, so please be happy with Michael and David from now on. Leaving my mother-in-law sitting in astonishment, I placed the keys and left the room. I had my luggage held temporarily and decided to stay at a single colleague's house for a while. Feeling accomplished, I slept soundly that night. It was a week later when my husband contacted me because he and his lover making some plans. When my husband was dawdling, I got a message from a girl at the bar. I got a good picture. I'm sending it. There was a picture of my husband chatting amiably with a not-so-young woman in the bar. The girl, perhaps feeling a sense of justice, must have followed them after closing. Photos of the two entering her hotel were also attached. Even in such times, it seemed the affair was ongoing, and the last bastion of my husband cleanly dissipated. I asked her to find out the woman's name and address for me. When all the evidence of the affair was prepared the next day, my husband called. "Where are you now?" "David and Samantha are here. Aren't you coming back soon?" "No, I'm not coming back. First your mother told me to leave." "I'm done. Are David and Samantha going to live together now?" "I knew it. David and his wife are moving in because they have no money. I heard that after graduating from a vocational school, they've been changing jobs, and now they're working part-time. That's no situation. I want you to come back. When I went to the pharmacy, I heard you're taking a break for a while. Do you have a place to stay?" "Yeah, I'm fine, so don't worry about me." "Your mom and David must have hated me. They'll be glad to live freely without me." My sarcasm leaves my husband at a loss for words. He's been turning a blind eye to the fact that his mother and David have not accepted me as family. But well, it's fine. I have something to talk about too, so I'll be back there once. Yes, I have to put the finishing touches for the sake of my future life. Please, I beg you. "I beg you," my husband replied in a slightly relieved voice. And later on, I returned to the house after a long time. There was some new furniture and home appliances in the house. When David and Samantha saw me, they greeted me with a nod, remaining seated on the sofa. As I sat down on a chair, my mother-in-law, sitting in front of me, glared at me with a scary face. "The atmosphere is bad. I should do what I need to do and leave quickly." Thinking so, David opened his mouth. "What did you come here for? Took all the house stuff. Are you a devil? You've been living comfortably being supported by Dad." I sighed. "I wanted all traces of me to disappear, just as you wished. But that's weird, right? You're just working part-time at a pharmacy. There's no way you have that much money." It seems that my husband still hasn't talked to my mother-in-law. When I glanced at my husband, he began to speak as if giving in. "For a little while now, Chloe and I have been combining our earnings to get by. Then the stuff you took out is ours too, right?" Caught for words, I decided to speak on behalf of my husband. Michael's company is doing badly, and his salary has plummeted. So for the past 5 years, I've been making up the difference. But that's not enough anymore, and now I'm paying the rent. My mother-in-law looked at him with surprise. "I'm not just a part-timer. I'm a part-time pharmacist, and the hourly wage is quite good. Now I earn more than Michael." My husband awkwardly looked away at my words. My mother-in-law's eyes hurriedly darted between both of us. "From now on, David will have to pay the rent. You're living here, right? You've been taken care of enough. Now it's your turn to repay your grandmother," suddenly asked. David, with a surprised face, inquired, "How much is the rent?" $2,400. "Do your best. It seems I'm done playing the mother role, so I have no obligation to look after you. Pull yourself together. You're going to be a father soon." David shook his head slightly, muttering, "That's impossible." Samantha, hearing this, raised her voice. "Wait, $2,400? You said if we live here, we don't have to pay rent or living expenses." I even quit my job. David's salary is only $1,200. What are we gonna do? I almost burst into laughter. "Don't worry, Samantha, you can move to a cheaper place, right? Michael still has a decent salary." Hearing this, Samantha's face relaxed a bit. "Oh, but I'm going to claim compensation from Michael and his mistress, so life might still be tough." Finally, Samantha broke down in tears. My husband was the one in panic. "What are you talking about?" Your mother told me about the new woman. I'll quit being your wife." "That's definitely a lie from Mom. You're the only one for me." My husband probably thinks there's no proof. Indeed, it's only been 10 days since I left the house. Wouldn't Evelyn be hurt if she heard that? Well, I'll contact her about this later. Hearing the name Evelyn from my mouth, my husband shivered. Realizing I knew everything, he sighed, holding his head. "Well then, I'll be going now. From now on, let's communicate through our lawyers." Saying that, I handed him the business card of my divorce attorney. Both my husband and David said nothing more, remaining silent. As I stand up with my bag in hand, my mother-in-law stands up simultaneously. Slamming both hands on the table, she shouts, "What's this?" "This mess is all your fault," in a voice so loud it's hard to believe she's an old woman. I'm instinctively infuriated too. "It was you who said get out. You said Michael had another woman. You interfered with my relationship with David. It's all on you." Feeling something hot welling up inside my chest, I regret not pushing further into my relationship with David, not holding back because of my mother-in-law. It's not about David. Play your part. Michael is having a hard time. Support him as his wife. Take your responsibility as a family. What is this woman talking about? If she hadn't called David back to this house or hinted at Michael's infidelity, I would still happily be supporting my husband and this household. I've always believed and supported Michael. I don't need any role anymore, and I won't return. Then I look straight into my mother-in-law's eyes and say slowly, from the beginning, I was never accepted into the family, so I can't take responsibility as a family member. My mother-in-law's lips tighten into a straight line, and she is shivering. I slip past the silent mother-in-law and quickly leave the room. Later on, my husband easily agrees to the divorce. It seems he can't argue against the photographic evidence of his infidelity. I sued my husband and Evelyn for causing me emotional distress and demanded a typical amount in compensation. It seems they immediately started the procedures to move out of the apartment. In the end, David and Samantha returned to the apartment, never to live with my mother-in-law again. My husband is considering remarrying, but Evelyn is furious at the addition of alimony and the request to live with my mother-in-law. He's considering putting my mother-in-law in a facility. It feels a bit pitiful to be abandoned by the son and granddaughter she has loved so much now. Is it the end of my mother-in-law role too? If my mother-in-law had said nothing and it had just been a homecoming birth, we might still be living together. After the divorce from David, an apology letter arrives. It includes things like he really wanted to be spoiled more as a child, couldn't talk because Grandma disliked it, and was happy when I came to school events. I should have reached out more. We might have been able to establish a different relationship. Although our relationship has ended, I am silently praying for David's future happiness. I returned to my job as a pharmacist and soon rented an apartment near my workplace. Feeling uneasy about the furniture and appliances I took with me, I ask a waste product buyer to purchase and dispose of them all. Life without the bullying is quiet and comfortable. And for a while, I wanted to live prioritizing my own happiness rather than living for someone else. Hang in there, Everly. I'm here for you. Jason, saying that, Tom firmly grips Emily's hand. Seems like they're too engrossed in the big event of childbirth to notice me. I resist the urge to slap him right then and there and decide to focus on my job. Internally, I'm debating how I'm gonna deal with these two. I think my colleague just gave me a shocked look. Gotta stay composed. For now, I should do everything I can to ensure the baby is born safely. After finishing up, I peek into the room and see the two of them getting all lovey-dovey, completely oblivious. You did great, Emily. Congratulations. Thank you, Jason. Right, the birth of a baby is indeed a joyous occasion. We should have a grand celebration then, I mutter, grabbing my phone, judging by the strained expression on my colleague's face. I probably look pretty peeved. First, I call my mother-in-law. The baby is born, please come over. And so after inviting all the relatives, my name is Natalie Miller, a 33-year-old working mom. Inspired by my mom, I became a midwife. My mother helped deliver countless babies, rejoicing with the parents at times and weeping with guilt at other times when she couldn't save a life. Benched over trains that watching her over the years. I found myself aspiring to be a midwife too. My dad is a man of few words, but he's always been there to support me in his subtle ways. Both are parents I'm truly proud of. However, there's one problem. A child in the family, my sister Emily living at home and unemployed, she often pestered family members for money. So when I got married, I distanced myself from her. I think you should do what makes you happy, Natalie, my husband. Jason would often say he was always understanding, even when I said I wanted to keep my distance from Emily. That's why I trust Jason from the bottom of my heart. Jason works in it, and with both of us being busy, we rarely find time for each other. We don't have any kids yet, while I sometimes wish we did. I also think it'd be nice to spend our golden years. Just the two of us, Natalie. You shouldn't push yourself too hard. Take care of yourself. Dewey often says, for the record, just with Jason's mother. His father has already passed away, and since she would have been living alone, we decided to move in with her. She, much like Jason, is a very kind person. She never comments on our choice to be child-free and is always looking out for me. I feel blessed to have her in my life, although sometimes it feels more like she's the one taking care of me. My days are typically filled with hard work. At the hospital that day, there was a complicated delivery, and I had to stay overnight at the hospital to care for the premature baby. That's the situation, so I won't be coming home until tomorrow. I see should I pick you up tomorrow. Then about work, Jason's comment makes me instinctively check the calendar. Tomorrow is just a regular Thursday, no holiday or anything special in my line of work. I often get weekdays off, but Jason, who works a regular office job, should be working on a weekday. Well, I actually had to work on a day off recently. They told me to take a compensatory day off. In return, really well if you can pick me up. I'd appreciate it. I decide to accept Jason's offer without thinking too deeply the next day after a very tiring day. Jason. And I ate out. And I immediately fell asleep when we got home. When I woke up, it was already dusk, and my mother-in-law was cooking dinner in the kitchen. Mom, I'm sorry, let me help you. It's okay. Dear Jason told me, you've had a tough day. Haven't you just rest? I'm relieved by my mother-in-law's genuine and warm words. Anyway, dinner's almost ready, so there's not much for me to do. Jason was called into work. Let's just eat, the two of us. I nod in agreement. During dinner, she kept glancing at me with a somewhat concerned look. Is something bothering you? It's just how are things with you and Jason lately? We're the same as always, I believe. That's good to hear. I was puzzled by her demeanor. And wanted to press further, but she deflected my questions. If it's something serious, she'll tell me eventually. I decided not to pry any further. From then on, Jason and I seemed to miss each other a lot. We used to go out on my off days, if they coincided with his, or take a long drive with my mother-in-law. But he's been busy lately. We hardly see each other at home, and direct conversations have become scarce. Still, we've been able to keep in touch through calls and messages, so I've never doubted anything. Life was a bit frustrating. One day, encouraged by my mother-in-law, I went shopping with her. I was engrossed in our outing, trying to forget about work, when suddenly, "Oh sis, long time no see." I encountered the last person I wanted to see. She approached with the same mischievous smile as always, still as beautiful as ever, which irritates me. I thought about escaping, but I couldn't just leave my mother-in-law behind. While pondering, Emily came right in front of us. "You still look exhausted. I can't believe you're my older sister. Mind your own business. Speaking of, since you're shopping, you have money, right? Now treat me." Here we go again. I sighed deeply at Emily's audacity. Ever since we were young, she's been asking me for money and favors. I'm not a pushover, so I've always rebuffed her. But she just doesn't get the hint. If you won't give it, I'll just take it. And so she started taking my things without permission. Once, when I was suspicious about my stuff disappearing, I caught Emily stealing money from my wallet. My parents and I gave her a serious scolding, but she didn't seem repentant at all. After that, she kept trying to steal from me and even went after my friends and boyfriends. Natalie is bullying me? She claimed, spreading lies about me. While my true friends stuck by me, some of my boyfriends ended up leaving me for Emily. This is why Emily and I have never gotten along. I plan to distance myself from her after high school. But I had been consulting with my mother, who's a senior midwife, and Emily had been visiting our family home, so we inevitably crossed paths. Only after I got married did we finally grow distant. And now there she is, right in front of me. Why are you here? We're shopping at a mall near Jason's parents' house. It's a place you can't get to from my family home without a car. Emily never got a driver's license, claiming it was too much hassle, and she's not the type to use public transportation. Well, how should I know? By the way, you're still handling other people's babies. When are you gonna have one of your own? What's that supposed to mean? Looks like I beat you to it. Saying that, Em tersed her belly. Upon closer inspection, she had baby items with her. Is she pregnant? But I hadn't heard anything about her getting married. Whose child might that be? Enough. My mother-in-law spoke sharply to Emily, who was grinning from ear to ear. We were enjoying our shopping. We don't need to be disturbed by someone as vulgar as you. Let's go. Natalie. I was pulled away by my mother-in-law's arm. Natalie, is she related to you? Ah, yes. I remembered that I had introduced Emily to Jason when I took him to my family home, but she had canceled both the pre-wedding meeting and the wedding itself. Perhaps my mother-in-law and Emily had never met. She's my sister. I see. Seeing the complicated expression on my mother-in-law's face. For what? I sighed. Half a year flew by in the blink of an eye. Jason became even busier, rarely responding to my messages. And my mother-in-law seemed to be out and about a lot lately, leaving me to spend my days off alone. I was venting about all this to a colleague when we received a call about a pregnant woman whose water had broken being brought to our hospital. Her name is what? The name listed was Emily, my very own sister. My colleagues, seeing my shock, asked, "Are you okay?" I managed a response and got to work. Heading to the delivery room, I saw a familiar face. "Stay strong, Emily. You can do this." For some reason, Jason, who should have been at work, was there. And he looked every bit the doting father to be. Wait, I was sure I let out a very low groan. I thought I saw the doctor jump a little, but I couldn't tear my gaze away from the two of them. "Hang in there, Emily. I'm right here." Jason. He was holding Emily's hand tightly, seemingly unaware of my presence. I wanted to slap him right then and there, but held back and focused on my jaw. My colleagues looked shocked, probably at the expression on my face. Gotta stay focused. For now, all I can do is ensure that the baby is safely delivered. "Dad, please hold Mom's hand tightly." Jason's gaze was fixed on Emily, and he didn't even notice when I spoke to him. That's infuriating, but I need to concentrate now. And an hour later, the baby was safely born. Congratulations. Thank you. Now, one of Jason's strengths and weaknesses is his ability to focus solely on one thing. On one thing, after all, he still hasn't noticed my icy glares. I left the delivery room, letting my colleagues handle the rest. Now, what should I do about those two? After finishing my duties, I peeked into their room and found the two of them being affectionate, oblivious to everything. "You did well." "Oh, Emily." "Yes, the birth of a baby is a joyous occasion. We gotta celebrate this big time." Mumbling to myself, I grabbed my smartphone, flinching from the startled look my colleague gave me. I probably had a fierce expression. I called my mother-in-law first. "The baby's been born. Please come." And as a result of inviting all the relatives. "Emily, were you pregnant?" I smiled at the relatives, who quickly gathered. Seeing my expression, my parents seemed shocked. My parents always know. They must have sensed my anger from just my smile. "Calm down, everyone. I'll explain everything. I don't see that fool in your sister." As I fool, she must be referring to Jason. Did my mother-in-law know something? With that in mind, I brought all the relatives to the room where the two were. "Excuse us." "Yes." "Oh, Natalie." My sudden entrance left the two of them in shock, and as more relatives came in, their faces turned paler. My mother-in-law's face, on the other hand, turned red with anger. Right, that foolish son. As everyone looked puzzled, my mother-in-law was the first to speak up, and then, turning to me, she apologized. "I'm sorry for the trouble my foolish son has caused." "No, you're not to blame." "Did you know about the affair?" "Yes, actually." Or according to her, she had once seen Jason and Emily walking together and wanted to ask me about it. But seeing that I was oblivious, she couldn't find the right timing. I've been investigating ever since. She had been tailing Jason and had even hired a private investigator to dig deeper. "Hold on. What about your job?" "Well, about that. He had quit, sadly." "What?" This new revelation left me stunned. And just as shocked. I thought, how pathetic. "Since when?" "About." "When exactly?" "About a year ago." Needless to say, this angered me further. The relatives too seemed to share my sentiments, and were giving cold stares at Jason and Emily. "You understand, right?" "Jason?" "Yes." "And Emily, once you're discharged, you understand." "Wait." "Yes. I get it." Wait, Jason looked downcast. Emily seemed sulky, considering her attitude. I decided not to show any mercy. After that, I reviewed the evidence that my mother-in-law had gathered. Though currently, Jason was being monitored by the relatives who had gathered earlier, and Emily was being watched by her parents. Thanks to the evidence my mother-in-law had gathered, it seemed likely I could file for divorce. Jason really is a fool. Oh, I'm sorry for my foolish younger sister. By the way, if you don't mind me asking, why is your sister like that? Oh, it's probably because of our aunt. Our aunt, a single lady without children, had always doted on Emily. With our busy mother, our reserved father, and me being rather loud, it was natural for Emily to grow attached to an aunt who validated her every action and pampered her. She became rather spoiled. My mother tried to distance Emily from our aunt, but they seemed to have been in contact behind her back. By the way, I wasn't pampered like that, and I often told her not to spoil Emily too much, so she probably found me annoying and kept her distance. You must have had a tough time. Well, she's been a handful since we were kids. Frets, even so. I can't completely blame Uriah. I wonder where I went wrong with Jason. Hearing my mother-in-law's comment, I just gave a wry smile. I had been completely fooled by Jason. I'd always thought of him as a genuinely kind person. Was I just blind? Sure, fascinating. I learned that the relatives had questioned Jason. According to the story, Jason and Emily first met when I brought Jason to my parents' house. Asked Bear, Emily said, actually, I have something I need to talk to you about regarding your sister. She cunningly got his contact information, and it seems they started an affair from there, even though I had warned him about Emily being that type of person before. Hey, didn't have any experience with women, even during his college days. I was relieved when he finally brought you home as his girlfriend. Oh, maybe he got fooled by Emily because of his lack of experience. I never imagined it would come to this. As I was lamenting with my mother-in-law, I got a call from Emily. I put her on speaker and answered, Hey sis, send Dad and the others home. I feel like I'm suffocating being watched over. You brought this on yourself. Mom just keeps lecturing me. I let out a deep sigh at Emily's words. She doesn't get it at all. Emily, if you're willing to pay the compensation right now, I'll send Mom and the others home. What's then possible? I just gave birth. Plus, I don't have any savings. Then just endure being watched. Such taste, sis. Suddenly Emily's voice cuts off. Sorry. I took her phone away. Right after. I hear my dad's voice and the call ends. And for now, I'll leave that side to my dad. I've decided not to go easy on Emily. After that call, any remaining sympathy for her completely vanished. I won't show any mercy now. It doesn't matter that she just gave birth. Don't go easy on Jason either. Really go with him. First, I'll make sure he can't recover. I firmly promised my mother-in-law, and we discussed the next steps. After a while, when things were ready, I called Jason and Emily. Jason was dragged in by our relatives, while Emily quietly followed behind my dad. Seeing her sudden change, I tilted my head in confusion until my mom, holding the baby, whispered in my ear. When Emily called you, remember? She got scolded really badly then. And come to think of it, I've never seen my usually quiet dad angry. Probably neither had Emily. Experiencing my dad's fury for the first time probably traumatized her. Well, we were called here, right? I'm truly sorry. She came crying to me asking for advice. You really think such an excuse will work on me? Jason averted his eyes at my words. At C production, in the past, Jason had angered me, though I now believe living together was a good choice. Initially, Jason had tried to forcefully move in with me and my mother-in-law without discussing it. After confronting him about it, we decided to live together after a proper discussion. I thought I had taught him not to upset me back then, but it seems that lesson went to waste. Or perhaps, due to that incident, he might have hidden his intentions perfectly. Don't you have any excuses? Ever since we were kids, you've always been the favorite. According to Emily, our parents always praised only me, while she was constantly scolded. This led her to resent me, and, being egged on by our aunt, she became even bolder. Then, when she heard I was getting married before her, she thought, it's always about my sister, and planned to lure Jason. That's why I called Jason and got him drunk. That's a pretty low move. A pretty low move. We only got involved once, but she told me, if you don't want me to tell sis, do as I say. Yeah, you seemed pretty close when you gave birth. Why did I fall for a man like him? Is love truly blind? Normally, I'd be repulsed by a guy who avoids confrontation like this. As we kept meeting, I genuinely fell for her. Then you should have just broken up. Should have just broken up with me. Well, I still love you, actually, and I wanted a child with you. That's sickening. Jason looked pained at my words. Why is he making a face like he's the victim? What about your job? I wanted to spend more time with Emily, so working felt like a waste. And you two were involved more than once, right? I'm a midwife. I can easily backtrack from the birth to when you got her pregnant. If you hide anything else, I won't forgive you. Shouldn't my father's words. Emily flinched. Then, she confessed that since Jason had quit his job, they met almost every day and got involved multiple times. Both my mother-in-law, and I could only sigh in disbelief. I'm gonna divorce you anyway? No, please. I'll also cut ties with you. You'll never set foot in this house again. Where the hell am I supposed to live? In fact, thanks to my mother-in-law hiring a private investigator, we found out another reason why Jason quit his job. If you're so desperate, I can refer you somewhere. Huh, prison? It's not bad. You get a roof over your head, 3 meals a day, and even earn a little money. Jason's face went pale at my words. As turns out, Jason had been embezzling and was fired, probably to provide for Emily. He had managed to repay the embezzled money, which kept him out of trouble, but that money came from selling off my savings and my mother-in-law's possessions. I was honestly shocked, and I felt pathetic for not seeing it. Ali, I'm not gonna show any mercy. If you keep arguing, I'll hand you over to the police. He slumped at my cold stare, and just like that, Jason was taken away by the police. I'd called them in advance. I just asked them to wait since I couldn't simply hand him over. Emily, don't you dare call me sister again. I truly despise you from the bottom of my heart. The last one left. Emily was taken away by my father. I never reached out to her again. Now, where were we? Yes, let's get started. After that, we immediately packed our stuff. We decided to move to a new house in case Jason tried to come back. Now, we're planning to live in a place closer to my workplace, the hospital, and we've even invited my parents. This is the proper goodbye. Jason, Emily, apparently, he was found wandering around our empty house and was picked up by some intimidating men in black suits. On the other hand, Emily's found a new job and seems to be working diligently. She's been juggling multiple part-time jobs. I heard this from my parents. They, in a final act of kindness, left her with just the house. She probably spends her days working herself to the bone in that house. She's so adorable. Since then, we've been living in our new home with Emily's child. Though she's retired, my mother has a wealth of knowledge about babies, and my mother-in-law has been ever present, taking great care of the child. Thanks to these two, I've been able to raise the child with ease and confidence. With both my father and I earning money, we're financially stable. Though we aren't bound by blood, this child was long awaited. Having this child has motivated me to work harder than ever before for bringing this child into my life. I have to be grateful to those two. Since then, the baby has officially become my child. I gave her a new name, Mindy. Someday, she might realize her origins and struggle with it. When that time comes, I intend to be right by her side. Until then, I aim to be the mother she can proudly boast about. Today, as always, I cherish life, hoping for immense happiness to come to Hikari into the new life that's just been born. With that prayer in mind, I continue to face life head-on. Then get out of here, you worthless scum. I never imagined hearing such words, especially right after buying our new home as newlyweds. My husband, since his parents moved in with us, things have become even worse. I feel like I have no allies in this house. But Bob is completely unaware of the true story behind this house and its ownership. It's about time I come clean and tell Bob and his parents the truth. These people, thinking men are superior, are in for a shock. How dare they tell me to leave? They'll soon realize they're too late. My name is Sarah. We got married just last year. Before getting married, my days were filled with going back and forth between work and home, and I had often wondered about my future. Seeing my high school and college friends getting married one after the other, I began to think maybe it'd be nice to share my life with someone. It's cliche to say, but finding someone is a mix of luck and fate, and things don't always go as planned. However, my life took an unexpected turn. Excuse me, did you drop this key? That simple incident at a mixer led me to meet my current husband, Bob. I had carelessly dropped my house key and he picked it up for me. Our conversation took off from there. The keychain, did you go to that concert? Yes. A friend invited me, and I became an instant fan. Do you know about it? I'm a huge fan too. I have the same keychain, but in a different color. Showing me his variant of the keychain, he continued. What a coincidence. I don't know many people who are fans. This is exciting. Same here. Would you like to chat for a bit? Our shared love for the concert and the artist led to a spirited conversation, which then transitioned to a cafe nearby. We exchanged numbers, and our relationship grew quickly from there. Life is full of surprises. So meeting someone with shared interests and getting married made me incredibly happy. Married life was blissful at first, but I distinctly remember the day the storm clouds began to gather. Bob started opposing the idea of me working full-time. People will think I'm making my wife work, you know? Couples working together is the norm nowadays. Besides, I've been working since I graduated from college. You're okay with people thinking I can't provide for you? Saying that, he aggressively bit into his dinner roll. I want to be the main breadwinner, and I want you to primarily take care of the home. So you want me to be a stay-at-home wife? Yeah, but not entirely. Maybe you could work part-time or something. Just because you say so doesn't mean I'll find a part-time job easily. You were just doing basic clerical work, after all. I'll look the other way until you find something. Just do your best. I didn't understand why, even when I was willing to comply with Bob's wishes. I was still subjected to such demeaning comments. Referring to one's wife as just someone doing basic clerical work and being condescending was unsettling. I began to dread our future together. Luckily, I found a suitable remote job, ensuring a steady income equivalent to part-time work. Bob ran outside. I balanced work from home with household chores. It seemed to be working out well for a while. One day, I overheard Bob on the phone. He seemed quite agitated. Though I couldn't hear the conversation, my curiosity was piqued. Hey, what's been going on since this morning? Did someone call? My mom seems to have twisted her ankle falling down the stairs. Apparently, it's worse than she thought, and she can't even walk properly. Oh, that's tough. How long do you think it'll take her to recover? Bob then looked at me with an expression that seemed like he had a bright idea. How about we let my mom stay with us until she heals? It would allow her to focus on her recovery. But if your dad's with her, we don't necessarily need to have her move in with us. Sarah, you're at home, so help out. I couldn't argue with Bob once he put it that way. Sometimes Bob can be very logical, and he tends to bombard me with sound arguments that disrupt my train of thought. I didn't mean it that way. But considering your dad's age and needing to support your mom on top of household chores, it must be a handful. When I was younger, I caused my parents a lot of trouble. It's not exactly paying them back, but I just want to do something for them. Hearing Bob's words, I felt ashamed, realizing I'd only been thinking of myself. That's very considerate of you. Bob, if that's the case, I'll be glad to help out. But I've only met your parents a handful of times, so the idea of living together, even for a short period, is a bit nerve-wracking. Don't worry, my mom and dad won't bite. Just be yourself. Bob tried to brush it off with laughter, but in hindsight, I wish I could go back and kick my past self for even considering living together so lightly. It's too reckless to suddenly live with people you barely know. I wish I could warn my past self right now. Initially, living with Bob's parents seemed to go well. However, the harmonious balance began to shift over time. While my father-in-law was all right, my mother-in-law seemed to have an opinion about everything I did. Sarah, isn't the rice a bit bland? I'm sorry. You're not serving this kind of rice in Bob's lunchbox, are you? Yes. I often pack leftovers for Bob's lunch. My mother-in-law let out a big sigh and glared at me. Leftovers in the lunchbox? Aren't you supposed to think about what your husband might want to eat that day and make it fresh in the morning? Just throwing in yesterday's food? Is that such a big deal? Just watching our exchange. Bob, instead of supporting me, sided with his mother. That's right. Sarah, you're always at home, but you can't even properly prepare lunch. It's a bit disappointing. You can't even fulfill your duties as a wife and still have a full plate of food. I was at my wits' end with the constant nitpicking that felt like a scene from a soap opera. My father-in-law would glance my way when I was being criticized but quickly look away again. If I continued this way, I felt like I'd mentally and physically break down. Initially, before we got married, we both agreed we wouldn't live with either of our parents. But now to have them suddenly move in with the newlyweds and face a constant barrage of passive-aggressive remarks. What was this all about? I reached my limit and tried to discuss the situation with Bob. But his evident annoyance became clear. No matter how much I spoke up, Bob wouldn't truly listen. So, I decided to approach my mother-in-law with humility, hoping she might be more understanding. Can I talk to you for a moment? What is it, out of the blue? To be honest, Bob and I have our way of doing things and our own routines. I thought it might be good to review how we live together and see if there's any advice you could give to help us all get along better. She snorted and turned her head. It's reviewing your lifestyle. Isn't that just a result of your own lack of effort? And casually addressing the mother of the head of the family like that. I'm sorry. I just thought we should try to find a compromise so we can all live together more comfortably. I mustered the courage to speak. If she thought I'd stay silent and let her walk all over me, she was sorely mistaken. I hoped at least that would get through to her. You're trying to kick me out, aren't you? After all, I'm just trying to teach you since you're clearly lacking. Aren't you even grateful? Grateful. Who's teaching you about the customs and traditions of the Johnson family? I've been taking you under my wing and guiding you every step of the way. I'd heard that my mother-in-law also married into the Johnson family, so I wondered how my father-in-law felt about everything. When I tried to catch his eye, he quickly looked away. My mother-in-law, being a woman of many words, could blow things out of proportion. At first, I thought if we lived together, maybe we could at least get along a little. However, as I came to the realization that it was impossible, words just poured out of me. I've had enough. Please leave. Just then, Bob walked in, witnessing the exchange between me and his mother. He turned to me, yelling angrily, "Well then, you get out, you good for nothing." He slammed the door open as he shouted, "Bob, when did you get home? I got a message from Mom after I finished work that you were being horrible to her." I rushed home, and what do I find? But I've tried talking to you so many times. I told you I want to get along with your parents. But I just don't know how. Do you always need my advice for everything? This is just like you, never thinking for yourself. That's why you're so useless. He pointed toward the front door, continuing his tirade. You're not fit to be my wife. I tell you apologize, and Mom forgives you. I won't either, so get that straight. Is this even real? Listen to me for once. Your stories aren't even worth listening to. I've said it before, just get out. His father, who was sipping tea nearby, avoided making eye contact with me. I remember the brief moment when he looked up. His expression was one of unease. Deep down, I was elated that my husband finally said what he wanted to. Holding back my laughter, I decided to remind Bob of some facts. Wait, did you forget? Forget what? Do you remember everything we went through to buy our house? That was the story of our journey to homeownership. Right after getting married, we started looking for a place to stay and eventually settled on buying our own home. I would have been fine with renting, but Bob was insistent on purchasing a house or apartment. Why not rent for a while? There's so much uncertainty with possible job transfers and children. Plus, saving up some more might get us a better house down the line. And why would we live in a rental? It's a once-in-a-lifetime purchase, right? Maybe if we save up a little more by renting first, we could get a better home. That would be too late with our marriage. I want to act like a proper head of the household. Don't you stand that? Just because you buy a house doesn't mean you've achieved everything. But if you feel that strongly about it, I won't oppose. Still, why are you so obsessed with getting a house right now? Bob responded, clearly agitated. A junior colleague at my office got married last year and bought a house soon after. Oh, the one who transferred here a few years ago? The one you often talk about? Yeah, he came here 3 years ago. Despite being bad at his job, he was sharp about this. I just can't stand that. I was taken aback by Bob's unexpected response. I decided to ask him for more details. Why can't you stand it? Normally, juniors should follow their seniors' lead. If they can't follow this simple hierarchy, how can they be trusted with work? Don't you think, Singh? Everyone's different. Bob, honestly, I was a bit put off by Bob's apparent jealousy and vanity. However, I knew he had a strong resolve, and once he made up his mind about something, there was no changing it. But the real shock came when we were about to sign the contract and found out we couldn't have the house in Bob's name. Why the heck can't I? I've been working hard in this company right out of college, moving all around the country. There's no way I can't get a simple home loan. There's gotta be some mistake. Well, Bob was causing a scene. I scanned the document handed to me. At a glance, it stated that there were issues with Bob's credit history, making it impossible to secure a loan. I wondered if maybe we could secure the loan if it was in my name instead of Bob's. I decided to suggest this to him. However, explaining the details to a panicked Bob seemed futile. You just want a mortgage for our house, right? We can request another review with your name, but how about also trying with mine? You think they'd give a loan to a woman? It might be a long shot, but it's worth a try, right? If it goes through the second time, we'll be able to buy our house. I tried to calm a shocked Bob and decided to request another credit check, this time for both of us. To ensure Bob wouldn't be shocked by the results, we had them sent to my parents' place in the neighboring town. Soon, I got the news from my family. The assessment showed that a contract could be made if it was under my name. Unexpectedly, we could secure the contract in my name, and I was relieved when we found out we could get enough for our home purchase. Regardless of whose name it's under, we're buying this house together. I didn't want to ruin his mood, so I only told Bob that we could secure the loan and kept the details about the names as secret. So in the end, there's no problem securing the loan, right? As well, that ends well. I knew it. There had to be a mistake. How could they deny a contract to someone who's been with a major corporation for years? Whose name value matters, doesn't it? I didn't want to burst the now upbeat Bob's bubble. Truth be told, the house contract and mortgage are all in my name. Now, the reason we had to secure the home loan in my name and not Bob's is significant. Bob's carefree nature. I knew he'd previously borrowed student loans, but hadn't always paid them back on time. I won't forget seeing his apartment's mailbox stuffed to the brim with letters. Don't you check your mail? You might have some urgent or important stuff in there. I'll check when I feel like it. Sari, you really notice the little things. Back then, I couldn't press further, but I did notice some overdue notices. Looking back, our marriage has been full of mishaps. His credit cards often got declined because he didn't keep enough money in the bank. This recurring issue eventually led to his card being terminated. When I noticed credit card bills cluttering our home table, some were already overdue by 6 months. Hey, about those letters on the table. The ones with the payment slips? I'm not sure about them. I'm too busy. Can you handle it? Can't you just take a look at what it's for? Suddenly, Bob became irritated and grumbled his way to the bedroom. I've got work to do. Can you handle such trivial matters? I'll never forget how he just carelessly shoved his responsibilities onto me without even giving it a proper look. I went and made the payment as he asked, but given the significantly overdue deadline, it was no surprise his credit card was no longer usable. Considering the student loans and credit card debts, it's no stretch to imagine that Bob's credit history was a mess. History was a mess. Despite it being his own affairs, did he not remember? The words almost left my lips. Just before a home purchase. Bob's carefree nature caused a lot of issues. I wonder if his mother is even aware of his credit problems and his inability to secure any loans or credit cards. Bob, seemingly recalling something after hearing my words, wore a startled expression. You're not saying the house contract is under your name, right? There's no way you, a woman, could handle that. Then, noticing Bob's demeanor, his mother chimed in. What's the matter? This house belongs to Bob, the head of this family. You should just leave if you have an issue. Since when did this house become Bob's? It's always been his from the start. In fact, if you want to stay, maybe you should get on your knees and beg for his mother to say something so ridiculous. Ignorance is a sin, and it's embarrassing. It felt like that phrase was made for her. Could you please stay quiet for a moment? If it makes you feel better, you can kneel before me right now. Why should Bob or I bow down to the likes of you? I got up from the chair and muttered to myself. Where should I start explaining to her? Suddenly, Bob grabbed my shoulder and exclaimed, Stop it! Don't say anything unnecessary to Mom. What's the problem here? Ignoring their voices. I moved away from the dining table and went to retrieve some documents from the safe in the next room. Take a look at these. They were made when we bought the house. His mother briefly glanced at the papers, then tossed them aside. His father picked them up and started scrutinizing them. Sighing, he looked at me, probably pondering something. Is this some contract or something about the house that Bob bought? Look closely. Both the mortgage and the ownership of this house are under my name. His mother almost jumped out of her seat. That's impossible. There's no way a woman could have a contract over the man of the house. Well, it's the truth. All thanks to Bob's careless personality, though. Who are you calling careless? She closed the gap between us in a rush. If she's going to push it this far, it's time to lay all the cards on the table. You mean to tell me you haven't noticed Bob's recklessness? He rarely meets any payment deadlines, and I've had to cover for him most of the time. You really can't believe that? He's been out of the house since high school, so I have no idea about his life after that. And so what if he made a few mistakes at home? I make a big deal out of it. I handed her a document detailing his credit history. What's this paper? It shows that Bob has no financial integrity because he's careless with money and deadlines. 30. What are you talking about? You really don't know. And if you did, you'd realize how embarrassing it is to owe money and act like everything's fine. His father was glaring fiercely at both Bob and his mother. I had never seen him look so intense. He's usually reserved and avoids making eye contact. Bob and his mother, on hearing my words, turned beet red and started trembling. What I was telling them had shaken them to their core. You badmouth your own husband. Don't you think you're lacking the awareness of being a wife? His mother always sides with Bob, but there's a limit. I pulled out an envelope. It's not just Bob, ma'am. Taking and spending someone else's money without permission is the start of theft. So now you're calling me a thief. That's a terrible accusation. Who's the real thief here? Trying to steal my son from me? She seems upset, thinking I stole Bob from her through marriage. But I calmly told her, there are some strange charges on my credit card statement that I don't recall making. Doesn't that seem odd to you? Why are you pinning this on me? Don't blame others. She's still trying to play innocent. Talk about not knowing when to quit. Didn't you use my credit card at the convenience store near the station last week? Turns out, an acquaintance of mine works there and saw you. You're lying, right? Dude, I am. I can even tell you what you paid for. Don't want me to list it? So what if I did? Bob's my son, so anything that belongs to him belongs to me too, right? But making a big fuss over nothing. You've no common sense. It's ironic that a woman with no common sense is lecturing me about it. Using someone's credit card without permission is a crime, you know? I might have just confused it with some loyalty card or something. That's not gonna cut it. My friend clearly heard what you were saying. You can't just claim ignorance. I didn't miss the way her cheek twitched. You're so sneaky, always doing things behind the scenes. Who's the sneaky one here? My friend told me, he said, it's my daughter-in-law's card, so it's fine. Oh, paying at the register. And you know that store has security cameras. If I went to the police, they'd take action. You're gonna throw me in jail. Hearing this, Bob chimed in. We're family living under the same roof. Isn't it a bit much to hold a grudge over just a little credit card use? With all the nonsense, I just wanted this to end. I took out my phone and said, I've reached my limit living with the two of you. Let me say it one more time. Leave my house and tell it police if you continue to deny the credit card issue. I'll report it as theft to the police. And I can't live with Bob anymore. You're going to abandon our marriage just like that. Aren't we supposed to support each other? I never thought I'd hear you talk about mutual support in a marriage. Then, if you won't leave, I will. Expect the divorce papers soon. Bob pleaded, not wanting a divorce, while his mother kept muttering about the police being a bluff, and his quiet father remained silent as usual. Infamy. I had said all I needed to. I already consulted with a divorce lawyer, and it was just a matter of letting them handle things. I never imagined they'd be like this, but maybe it was a blessing in disguise to see their true colors so soon. In the end, Bob and I decided to divorce. The lawyer said Bob and his mother resisted until the very end. At first, they were defiant, saying things like, I might still forgive you non-seally, you lack the awareness of being a wife. However, as the lawyer calmly explained everything, their confidence waned. Clearly realizing they had no case, they gave in. After I moved out, Bob and my ex-in-laws continued living in the house without permission, but considering I owned the house and were no longer a family, I don't owe them anything. Through the lawyer, I gave them a choice, move out soon or pay a much higher rent than market value. They chose to move out. Furthermore, having seen his wife's true colors during this debacle, my ex-father-in-law surprised everyone by filing for divorce. He'd been quiet throughout, but there must have been things he couldn't overlook. Not now. He lives alone using his savings, while Bob and his mother seem to be struggling. Bob tried to take care of his mother, but soon after, he faced issues at work. He had been treating a junior coworker terribly at work, which led to reprimands from upper management and resulted in a demotion. Apparently, his salary was cut and his position was lowered. It was quite a sorry state. Eventually, he resigned but hasn't found another job, forcing him to live in poverty. Sees what goes around comes around. After a split, I've been enjoying my solo life. Not having Bob and his mother around is such a relief. I didn't realize how stress-free it could be. Sometimes their actions still infuriate me, but I focus on my work instead of dwelling on it. Through a friend's recommendation, I started working at a new workplace and find myself tackling unfamiliar tasks every day. In this new environment, I'm also considering obtaining certifications, so my days are pretty busy. But I kind of prefer being busy. It keeps my mind from wandering. Wondering, making things easier on me. It's on my days off. I love cafe hopping and enjoying some reading time. It makes me feel truly happy. Now, I cherish these moments of personal joy and contentment.